Amazing transformation. Black mechanic exposes hidden talent. After an incredible encounter with Jalen wiped the grease from his brow, the scent of burnt oil mingling with the southern heat. Despite the laughter emanating from the back of the shop, he felt a swell of frustration, another day trapped in the body of a grease monkey. For years, he had expertly run the family auto shop, pouring sweat and skill into every engine, but it was never enough to shift the townsfolk's outdated view. They saw only the tools in his hand, failing to understand the complex dance of mechanics that flowed through him. The whisper of cars, the hum of their engines, spoke a language he had long mastered, yet all they beheld was the surface, a mere mechanic in a dirty jumpsuit. He shook the thoughts away, focusing on polishing the bright paint of a classic Ford Mustang. Jalen leaned in, inspecting the seams, when his fingers brushed against a hidden latch inside the dashboard. Curiosity piqued. He pulled it open, revealing a stack of old letters, dusty, yellowed pages that had been all but forgotten. The words echoed with the voice of an original owner, an engineer who had envisioned cutting-edge designs and dreams that danced beyond steel and bolts. "The world is not just grease and grime," one letter proclaimed, igniting a flicker of inspiration in Jalen's chest. But with that spark came trepidation. Hadn't he been taught that ambition like this was a betrayal? The dreams of engineers and innovation felt foreign here, buried beneath years of family tradition. His vein contained both the oil of machines and a longing for a life full of possibility. What would his father think? The mere thought of abandoning the shop constricted his chest. His friends joked about it, wrapped in camaraderie that felt more like chains. "Dreaming too big, Jalen. You'll forget where you came from." They'd scoff, their laughter seeping into his skin. Each barb tightened the grip of unease around his heart. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Night settled quietly, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead as Jalen sat in the wrench-marked shadows of the shop. The engine's steady thrum felt like a heartbeat beneath his fingertips, grounding him as flickers of self-doubt skated through his thoughts. Then, Mr. Thompson appeared, a retired engineer with weary eyes that held stories of ambition lost in the rigor of life. He saw Jalen's potential that even Jalen couldn't recognize. "You have talent, boy," he assured, nudging the fire inside him with each word. But with every encouragement came the daunting realization of the engineer competition looming ahead, a path that could lead to innovation or destruction for the very legacy he fought to uphold. The pressure mounted as the reality of the competition gnawed at him. Then he learned the judge, the same man who could dismantle his father's legacy, was the founder of the automotive company his father had struggled against. A living reminder that dreams could crumble beneath prejudice. Would pursuing innovation mean he was abandoning his roots? Would proving his worth as something more than a grease monkey doom the shop to the very fate he dreaded? Jalen stood at the edge of a precipice, uncertainty coiling around him like a snake as his breath quickened. The stakes now felt unbearable. Torn between family and his burgeoning dreams, he felt the weight of history in every decision swirling in his heart. What would he choose? And would it finally honor his father's legacy or obliterate it? Tension pulsed thick in the air, ready to explode as the night deepened, leaving Jalen at a crossroads of anguish and ambition, teetering on the brink of his own transformation. The following morning dawned with a heavy, oppressive stillness in the auto shop, the sun struggling to breach the layers of doubt that clung to Jalen's mind. He arrived early, arriving before the familiar sounds of bustling engines and clanking tools descended like a cacophony into the quiet space. He pulled on his jumpsuit, the fabric familiar and heavy against his skin, but now infused with the weight of his unarticulated dreams. As he stared at the gleaming Mustang, a thought fluttered unbidden. What if he could design something that spoke for the dreams buried beneath layers of tradition? He hesitated, fingers grazing over the hood, his pulse quickening. Each car part felt more than just machinery. They felt like echoes of a path not yet taken. Fueled by urgency, he pulled out the letters he had found, immersing himself in the potent words of a visionary engineer. Could he be that person? The thought set his heart racing. It felt both exhilarating and terrifying, yet visions of doubt crept quickly into his mind. Was he educated enough? Did he have the right connections? He shoved the letters back into the dashboard, feeling the cool metal against his fingertips as if it were a lifeline. Hours turned into a blur of work, but within the rhythmic motions of tightening bolts and exchanging parts, Jalen found his focus dissipating. Mr. Thompson's words echoed in his mind, each syllable urging him to embrace his potential. But could he confront his community's narrow perceptions? Every mocking laugh from his friends replayed like a haunting refrain. They were tethered, rooted firmly in this world of grease. Would they understand if he dared to dream bigger? The day dragged onward until the familiar thrum of engines was replaced by a silence much deeper than before. Jalen grabbed an oil can and stepped outside, the sun now almost setting, its warm glow infusing a sense of calm over his turbulent thoughts. He needed clarity. Each breath he took echoed a growing desire for something more, but was entwined with fear. He felt the pull of the shop, a space where he had poured not only skill but love, a turbulent love that threatened to fracture if he stepped beyond its bounds. Then an unexpected voice brought him back to the present. It was Miss Harper, the elderly woman with a penchant for vintage cars, approaching with a gleam in her eye. "You're different, Jalen. I can feel it," she said, her voice cracking with age. "I always see a fire in you when you work." "Why does it matter?" he questioned quietly, almost as if seeking her validation. "Because," she leaned in, eyes shining, "the world needs your spark. Not just this shop. They need your vision, child." Her words were a jolt, a challenge that resonated deep within him. Could he really be someone that the world needed? That night, sleep was elusive as he lay in bed, contemplating Ms. Harper's words. Each idea for the competition twisted and turned in his mind like the gears of an engine refusing to start. He envisioned the innovations he could bring, but they came packaged with fears of abandonment, of leaving behind the shop and the history it housed. A shiver of resolve crept into his spine. He rose early yet again, determination pulsing through him. The competition was not just a test of imagination, it was a test of courage and identity. Could he embody both a mechanic and a visionary? As he prepared himself for the day, instinctively he reached for the hidden letters, ready to dissect their wisdom further. Then came the next jolt, a message from a friend regarding the competition's upcoming presentation night, with a direct challenge. "Are you ready to show them what you're worth?" Standing at that precipice, between dreams and tradition, Jalen clenched his fists. The moment was swiftly approaching, when he would need to decide whether to embrace his destiny or stay tethered to the past. But more pressing than the decision itself was the looming confrontation with his friends and the judge. What if they judged him not by his talent, but by the grease under his nails? One thing was clear. The engine of his desires was revving, and Jalen was about to hit the accelerator towards an uncertain future. Would he find the courage to face the competition and the intense scrutiny waiting for him? Jalen stood in front of the Mustang, his heart pounding with a blend of anticipation and anxiety. The sun was just breaking above the horizon, casting soft rays into the dimly lit shop. With the competition date looming, he felt more acutely than ever the weight of expectation, not just from others, but from within himself. Could he reconcile his identity as a mechanic with the burgeoning visionary inside him? He ran a hand through his hair, feeling the frizz caused by a restless night. The all-consuming pressure to create something from nothing was reverberating within, yet still he hesitated. Taking a deep breath, he opened the toolbox before him. Meticulously organized, it symbolized not only the craft he had mastered, but the fundamentals of design he was willing to learn. Thoughts of Miss Harper surged forth. Her conviction felt like a beacon, urging him onward. What did he truly want to achieve? The names of past champions echoed in his mind, each a luminary in the world of innovation. He could hear their stories of grit and resilience, and he felt a swell of determination breaking through his doubts. What if I built not just cars, but futures? The idea flowed, and for the first time he committed it to paper. Sketches of innovative designs that merged performance with sustainability. Each line infused with hope, a reflection of who he was and who he aspired to become. But doubts churned in the pit of his stomach. What if his peers dismissed his ideas as unrealistic, too grand for a mechanic's workshop? He imagined their sneers, the way they could undermine years of friendship over a single choice to dare. He seized a wrench instead, feeling its weight and familiar contours grounding him. Every bolt he turned carried an implicit vow. His dreams would not be stifled by fear. Sparks flew as he settled back to work, focus hardening into steel resolve. The Mustang began to transform under his hands, but it was more than just a project. It was symbolizing his journey, a tangible representation of his ambition. As he meticulously shaped it, he realized he was reshaping himself as well. Each adjustment was not just mechanical, it was transformative. But the clock was ticking. A looming shadow didn't just follow him from shop to home. It was the impending presentation. His friends' judgments haunted him, intensified by their previous laughter ringing in his ears. Every moment spent improving the Mustang now felt like a step into the battlefield. Then came the day of the competition rehearsals. He stood with a tight knot of anxiety nestled deep within him, surrounded by a sea of competing talent. Their confidence appeared to radiate from them like an engine's roar. Jalen felt small, insignificant, a mere cog in a grand machine. As he walked to the front, the weight of his peers' gaze was palpable. Would they see the mechanic disguising a dreamer? Or would the grease-stained facade obscure the brilliance he wished to project? He swallowed hard, hands clammy yet firm. Realizing he could choose not to lean on their perceptions, he steadied his breathing and stepped closer to the podium. "The world sees what they expect to see," he started, the nervousness in his voice evident. "But what if we dared to show them more?" The silence was heavy, a collective pause as his words hung in the air. He knew that first impressions mattered, but he had no intention of withholding who he was. His heart thumped louder within his chest, fueled by an awakening passion that threatened to explode. Was this the moment to reclaim his voice, to buffer the ridicule with creativity? Then it struck him. The churning doubt was nothing more than a beast he needed to tame. Would he tame it today? As he raised his hands to reveal the sketches, a flicker of realization dawned in him. This could be the moment of fusion, his past and future intertwining like gears, harmonizing in a harmonious dance. The crowd shifted, their expressions revealing more interest than disdain. But would he hold their attention long enough? Would they allow him a space to flourish, or would he remain a footnote in their story? In that instant, Jalen knew he was not just competing with designs. He was competing with perception, with prejudice. Yet as he finished unveiling his ideas, he felt empowered. The time had come to face the deeper conflict within, the question of whether he would be judged by the grease under his nails or by the fire burning in his heart. And as he stood there, the audience attentive yet silent, he sensed a looming challenge ahead, a test not just of design, but of acceptance. Would he rise above this scrutiny or become a whisper in a noisy room? Jalen clenched his fists, ready to discover if the world was ready to embrace his creativity. The journey was just beginning, and the true test still awaited. Jalen felt the weight of expectation pressing down heavily as he stood silently before the expectant crowd. Their stares bore into him, and he could feel the heat rising from the flush of his cheeks. This was more than just a presentation. It was the culmination of a transformation he had embarked upon, not just for the Mustang, but for himself. For the first time, he felt the thrill of potential coursing through him, mingled with the dark undertones of fear. Without realizing it, he had begun to reforge his identity. He watched the faces in the audience subtly shift, the initial skepticism slowly melting away, revealing intrigue. It empowered him. This was not merely about flaunting designs, it was about sharing his journey, embedding his struggles into his art. As he shared the sketches of his dream car, he spoke spiritedly of innovation, of possibility, urging them to envision a future where dreams intertwined with reality, where technology met sustainability in perfect harmony. His heart raced faster, a symphony flailing against the restraints of uncertainty. What if they didn't understand? What if they reduced his aspirations to mere dreams? But with every gesture, every animation of his hands, he forged a bond. Not with the car alone, but with the audience. He shared the yearning that resided in his soul, the dreams too grand for a mechanic's tools, but essential nonetheless. After presenting the last design, he allowed a moment of silence, watching how the audience absorbed the information, letting it settle. This was not just a display of talent, it was a reflection of his heart, a descent into vulnerability he hadn't anticipated. They could either embrace it or dismiss it, and that uncertainty buzzed in the air like an electric charge. Then something shifted. The head judge, a veteran in automotive innovation, leaned forward, capturing Jalen's gaze. He saw not just the mechanic, but the dreamer who dared defy convention. Interesting concepts, Jalen. Can you speak to how these designs can translate into real-world applications? Her inquiry was probing, more than an interrogation. It was an invitation to deepen the conversation. With every word, Jalen reinforced the connection. He spoke passionately about using recycled materials, optimizing performance, and minimizing environmental impact. He mentioned the responsibilities of designers to push boundaries, to create vehicles that were more than machines, but conduits of change. He felt the internal knots of anxiety loosen slightly, replaced by belief. Yet as he walked back to his seat, the lingering doubt resurfaced. Had he effectively conveyed his vision, or merely scraped the surface? He caught whispers in the audience, some nodding in agreement, others furrowing their brows. What reactions might await him outside the room? But the day was not done yet. He still had the panel of judges to face. After the presentations, Jalen joined the cohort of his peers, tension palpable in the air as they awaited feedback. The competition was fierce, and he could feel the weight of comparison looming over him, doubts creeping back in. What if he was seen as an outsider, a mechanic in a world of innovators, a bait for mockery instead of admiration? The tension shattered when a fellow competitor approached him with a friendly smile. "Hey, your designs were unique. Didn't expect to see that level of creativity. I'm impressed." The compliment hung in the air like a fortifying shield. But his doubts fought back fiercely, reminding him of the conversations that would follow, judgments masked in camaraderie. Jalen clenched his teeth, a fire igniting within. Maybe the competition was not just against others, it was against himself, the self that grapples with inferiority and self-doubt. And just as he was about to lose himself in this tide of insecurity, Miss Harper's voice echoed in his mind. Creativity thrives in authenticity, and authenticity challenges perception. As the day drew to a close and the judges deliberated, Jalen felt a surge of clarity. This journey stretched beyond mere recognition. It was an assertion that he, too, belonged here. Perhaps amid the anxiety and uncertainty, a subtle revelation awaited. Could he redefine not only how others perceived him, but how he perceived himself? Determined to embrace the unknown, Jalen stood by the exit, heart racing, thinking about what awaited. Would he face the judgment of his peers with unwavering conviction? With the results yet to be announced, he felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. What if they didn't see the talent he had buried inside? The moment of truth loomed, a test not merely of design, but of self-acceptance. Did he dare to believe in himself enough to embrace whatever came next? The buzz of nervous energy surrounded Jalen as he awaited the results. With each passing moment he drew deep breaths, urging himself to remain calm. The confidence he had briefly glimpsed during his presentation felt evasive now, slipping away like the final flickers of daylight. As the judges began to call names, Jalen's stomach twisted. Each recognition was a reminder of the privilege he fought so hard against. He felt an us versus them divide, not only with the judges but with his fellow participants. As names were called, gaining applause and cheers, he wrestled internally, picking apart every compliment or slight he imagined from others. It's just a name, he kept telling himself, a ruse of power that had no bearing on his worth. Yet the fear clawed at him, whispering insecurities deeper than any mechanical failure. What if he never truly belonged? What if the drive to blend dreams with reality was just a folly only he saw? His thoughts spiraled until the moment he heard his name, Jalen. Each syllable bounced off the walls, and time fractured around him. For a second, nothing seemed real. Jalen stood, frozen, his legs heavy with incredulity, and then he forced himself to move, to step forward. The head judge was nodding, her gaze unwavering. "Present your designs to the panel," she instructed, waving him closer. He could feel the eyes of his peers upon him, some astonished, others calculating, each reaction like a sharpened blade against his resolve. Then he faced the panel again, this time with an audience that included not just critics, but potential allies. With a stealing breath, he reclaimed the energy he had harnessed earlier. Slowly, he unfolded a new hope, presenting design modifications that aligned even more closely with sustainability principles, nodding to a changing automotive industry. Each word echoed his essence, translated through a language of practical and innovative solutions. The judges listened, drawing in silent confidence as he spoke about efficiency and future trends in car technology. Yet what lingered was that moment before, self-doubt churning beneath the surface, grappling with the unsung aspects of his identity. They were tapping into something deeper than design. This was not just mechanical engineering. It was a chance to connect with a world that until now had felt far removed. After the session, Jalen stepped down, heart racing but resuscitated with purpose. He glimpsed the faces of his peers, waiting for feedback. Some whispered words of admiration, but others merely smiled thinly, retaining their skepticism. As the deliberation dragged on, a sudden silhouette approached him. It was the same competitor who had complimented him earlier. "You did an exceptional job, Jalen. I saw the passion in your designs. The judges will see it too." But doubt still lingered at the edges of his mind, trying to encroach upon this newfound clarity. Did he dare to acknowledge the potential within? The possibility of being recognized not just as an outsider, but as a trailblazer, was tempting and terrifying. With the results hanging in the balance, Jalen felt the world narrowing, forcing him to confront the fundamental question: who did he want to be? Did he want to remain the mechanic hiding in the shadows, or could he redefine himself as an innovator breaking boundaries? In that moment, something shifted. A commitment ignited within him to pursue this dream regardless of the outcome, an acceptance that the journey itself held more meaning than validation. Facing the judges would not only reveal his designs, but would also manifest who he was becoming. Just then, the announcement rang out, bringing the room to an electric hush. The panel stood to deliver their verdict, but a new realization dawned on him. All this time, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about embracing a vision that transcended the metal and engines. And as he prepared to embrace the outcome he could scarcely anticipate, one thought sparked. Maybe he was ready to challenge everything he'd known, even himself. But what was about to unfold next would either reinforce his transformation or send him spiraling back into doubt. The air settled like a heavy, unnerving shroud as the announcement echoed in his ears, and the winner is... Jalen's heart raced, caught between hope and apprehension. He focused on the judges' lips, mapping their faint movements, but not hearing the name that followed. Instead, deafened by the momentum of the moment, every heartbeat felt like an eternity. Finally, clarity struck when it became apparent his name wasn't called. A wave of emotion surged: relief, anger, and something perplexing: self-acceptance. Within that instant, Jalen understood that while the validation he had been chasing slipped through his fingers, his true journey had only just begun. In the hours that followed, Jalen lingered in the hallway, leaning against the wall, still tethered to the pulsing energy of the room behind him. His peers celebrated, engaged in conversations that filled the air with excitement, but he found only silence within. He was left grappling with an internal conflict that screamed louder than any cheers. The reignited spark inside urged him to delve beyond the defeat, to unearth the lessons hiding beneath the surface. An older competitor brushed past him, offering, "You got something special, Jalen. Don't let one moment dim the flame." The words resonated with depth that caught him off guard. It wasn't the first time someone had acknowledged his potential, yet this time it stirred something within, compelling him to confront the deeper question. Who was he without the accolades? Determined to explore that space, he set a plan in motion. Jalen spent the following weeks honing his design skills, but this time with newfound fervor. He immersed himself in workshops, engaged in community forums, and sought out mentorship opportunities. With every late night he sacrificed, it became clearer that this journey was more than a quest for recognition. It was about wielding his voice and showcasing his ideas to the world. As he dedicated more time to refining his designs, Jalen found his curiosity blooming into unexpected territories. Concepts of electric vehicles coalesced with sustainable practices, each day unveiling new layers of his creativity and understanding. The task was not merely to create vehicles, it was to forge solutions, to manufacture a cleaner, more efficient tomorrow. The engines of his aspirations slowly morphed from a cacophony of doubt into a symphony of purpose. But each triumph came with an undercurrent of anxiety. Would his peers see him as a fraud, as someone merely riding the coattails of change instead of driving it? He couldn't shake off the spectre of judgment looming over him, propelling him into sleepless nights filled with second-guessing. Yet with each passing project, that fear began to dissipate into distant echoes. He learned to challenge dread with creativity, a strategy that turned valid criticism into opportunities for growth. Each feedback session became a workshop of resilience rather than a battlefield of self-worth. Then came the day he was termed as the innovator in a networking meeting. The term slipped from a mentor's tongue casually, but for Jalen, it felt monumental, an identity forged through battle, through sweat, and through realization. Before long, an opportunity to present his latest prototype arose, and with it, a fresh wave of apprehension. Jalen stood at the threshold of the event, pondering whether he could truly own this title, whether he could stand behind the innovation that marked his journey. In that pivotal moment, he recognized the essential truth. It wasn't about convincing others of his worth, it was confirming it to himself. As he prepared to step onto the stage, something unshackled within him. No longer was he the mechanic hiding in shadows. He was its architect, building a narrative of growth within and without. And just when he thought he was ready to reclaim his rightful place in the field, a message arrived, unraveling possibilities he could never have anticipated. What awaited him on the other side turned not just the spotlight, but also his trajectory in ways he had never imagined. Would he lean into this new adventure or retreat back into the shadows? The choice loomed as he took a deep breath, ready to embrace the unknown. The notification pinged sharply against the silence of Jalen's room, a digital herald of change. His heart thudded in rhythm with the vibrating screen. As he swiped to unlock his phone, the bold letters sent a charge of adrenaline through his veins. "We'd like to invite you to collaborate on an electric vehicle prototype for a national competition." He read the email again, dissecting every word. Collaboration, national competition. The buzz of excitement warred with a familiar inclination for self-doubt. What if they realized he wasn't as put together as they might think? The agonizing visions of inadequacy clawed at him, a gut instinct urging him to dismiss the opportunity. Yet, beneath that familiar layer of trepidation, another voice murmured, "Embrace it." Wasn't this the very challenge he had been preparing for? The forthcoming days propelled him into action. He drafted a plan, mapping out every component of the prototype, researching current trends in sustainable vehicle technology, gathering materials, and reaching out to potential collaborators. Each move felt transformative, not merely building a prototype, but reconstructing his identity piece by piece. Doubts resurfaced at unpredictable moments. Late-night thoughts spiraled as he questioned his authority. Can I really lead this project? Am I capable of steering a team? Those worries felt sharper when he considered the caliber of others participating. Comparisons crept in, weighing his confidence even further. Rather than allowing these thoughts to paralyze him, Jalen sought strategies to overcome them. He reached out to mentors, pooling their insights to augment his understanding. Every conversation infused him with a richer substance of knowledge and perspective, turning uncertainty into curiosity. Feedback from a seasoned engineer on his initial design sketch imprinted specific actions he needed to firm up his resolve. As he began recruiting teammates for his project, he was additionally hit by his own preconceptions. How could he approach potential collaborators with integrity while battling the fear of rejection? Yet when he stepped outside, engaging fellow designers and engineers, he was met with enthusiasm and an appreciation for his vision. They rallied behind him, not just for his ideas, but for his genuine passion for change. The very authenticity he feared would expose a lack. Weeks transformed into a whirlwind of brainstorming sessions and late-night adjustments at the makeshift workshop he had carved out in his garage. Jalen reveled in the progress visually manifesting before him, every modification a tangible reflection of his growth. Yet the biggest test loomed just beyond his reach, the looming competition itself. As the deadline approached, his excitement waned and anxiety washed over him like a cold tide. What if they massacred his prototype? What if it did not hold up? In the dim light of his garage, he could feel the weight of expectations pressing on his chest. On one hand, he desired to present a masterpiece aligned with the potential he harbored. On the other, a gnawing uncertainty about revealing his work haunted him. Late at night, he found himself confronting thoughts that challenged who he was: a mechanic, a creator, an innovator, and most importantly, a learner. The day of the competition arrived, and with it clarity emerged. Winning wasn't the end game, it was how he had evolved through the process. Jalen took a deep breath, recognizing that the growth, the skills, and the resolve he had gathered were victories in themselves. As he stepped into the competition hall, the swell of voices buzzed around him. The weight of possibility set in as the rush of anticipation swirled through the air. He was no longer merely stepping onto a stage for validation. He was a conduit of the hard work he poured into every night spent devising and creating. That's when it happened, an unexpected jolt as he caught the gaze of a familiar face in the crowd, a renowned innovator whose work he had long admired. The intensity of that gaze ignited something inside him, pushing his resolve. The reality of the moment expanded beyond his initial fears. He felt a wave of empowerment unfolding. Would this towering figure see his potential, perhaps even challenge him further? What revelations awaited as he moved closer toward the actualization of his ambition? The echoes of self-denial fractured, transformed, and surged as he prepared to unveil his creation. And with that energy coursing through him, Jalen realized one thing: his journey was still just beginning, and the ultimate challenge awaited just at the end of this presentation. Would he dare to push even further into the unknown depths of his own potential? Jalen steadied himself as he prepared to present, heart racing, thoughts swirling. There was a convergence of excitement and dread, as if his very identity hung balanced on the precipice of judgment. He glanced at his prototype, humming softly in the backdrop, a representation of tireless nights and relentless ambition. The cutter lines, the layers of paint, each rivet told a story of resurgence, of who he was becoming. The moment of truth arrived. He cleared his throat and stepped forward to address the audience as whispers faded into an expectant hush. All eyes were on him, including that of the renowned innovator he admired. It was a surreal amalgamation of inspiration and pressure, a commanded space where every word would be scrutinized. Jalen was no longer a shadow. He was a beacon of what he had to offer. As he overviewed his design, articulating the intricate details of efficiency and sustainability, a surge of conviction washed over him. His voice, rich with passion, punctuated by pauses that invited engagement. He wasn't just sharing ideas, he was sharing an experience, his journey, the learning that replaced fear with knowledge. But halfway through the presentation, self-doubt crept back in, whispering, "What if they don't believe in your vision?" Just then, he noticed the innovator leaning forward, eyes gleaming with curiosity. That single gaze ignited a spark within Jalen. He wasn't alone in this. The more engrossed he became in his own narrative, the clearer it seemed. This prototype was an extension of him, not just a mechanical interface. The presentation ended to a polite applause, but he craved a deeper acknowledgement. He scanned the crowd, hoping to catch a glimpse of validation from his enigmatic observer. Instead, he sought feedback, engaging provocatively with questions, allowing himself to be vulnerable in admitting uncertainties. As the formalities concluded, Jalen's pulse quickened when he caught the innovator approaching him amidst the departing crowd. That clarity from before surged back into awareness. He was ready to engage, not simply for praise, but for growth. The innovator extended a hand, introducing himself with warmth. They exchanged pleasantries, yet Jalen felt a consuming urge to dive deeper. "Your prototype has a unique voice," the innovator said, "but I sense there's more to it. Something about your approach captivates." Jalen felt his edges soften, encouragement flooding his thoughts. "I've had to reimagine my perspective on what innovation means to me." The innovator nodded, face brightening as Jalen continued sharing insights. It felt as though a door had swung open, revealing ideas that had been lurking in the shadows of his mind. Their conversation morphed into a dialogue of shared visions, diverging experiences, and the innate drive to effect change. But as the conversation expanded, A flicker of anxiety disrupted his flow. Jalen needed to address the raw honesty behind his creation, references to his struggles, vulnerabilities, moments when he contemplated giving up. Would vulnerability be a burden or a bridge? What if this truth stripped away the impression he had carefully crafted? Finding the courage to lead with authenticity, he articulated his journey, the late nights, the self-doubt that had plagued him, the way mentorships transformed those doubts into powerful lessons. With every syllable, he could feel that initial dread giving way to unwavering conviction. As their conversation deepened, the innovator began to share invaluable insights about resilience and risk-taking in the industry, igniting deeper layers of understanding within Jalen. The revelations resonated with Jalen, reminding him that every innovator faced hurdles. Overcoming them defined their path. As they parted ways, the innovator gripped Jalen's shoulder with sincerity. "Your potential is only matched by your hunger to grow. Stay true to that journey." Those words became fuel, igniting a relentless determination in him that eclipsed everything he had doubted. As he left the venue, anticipation buzzed like static electricity in the air. He laced his fingers around that moment of connection, a newfound realization imbued with hope. Yet beneath the excitement, the urgency persisted. His thoughts darkened when he wondered how far this would take him. Was he ready to expose himself not just as a creator, but as a leader? The future loomed with uncertainty, yet every encounter aligned him closer with his purpose. Was he prepared to challenge not just his ideas, but his entire identity again? As Jalen stepped into the raw unknown, he silently questioned whether his next leap would propel him toward his highest aspirations, or place him in the crucible of fear and failure once more. The horizon seemed tantalizingly close, but the path was still fraught with obstacles yet unrevealed. Jalen awoke the following morning, the sunlight cascading through his window like a spotlight illuminating his thoughts. The previous night's encounter replayed vividly in his mind, the innovator's encouragement, their deep conversation about resilience, the magnetic connection that felt both daunting and inspiring. He felt invigorated, yet a familiar pang of apprehension rested in his stomach. He needed to reflect on his next steps. With a quick breakfast and barely a glance at the news, he grabbed his notebook, heading to a nearby cafe. As he settled into a corner table, the aroma of coffee swirling around him was a comforting reminder of his roots, each sip unexpectedly grounding amidst the swirl of ambitious aspirations. Jalen unfolded his notebook. As he gazed at blank pages, memories ignited his creativity. Past failures punctuated by unyielding will. Nights spent tinkering with prototypes, finding joy in the process rather than solely the end result. Yet, during those moments, he often felt like a lone traveler searching for a path. He began scribbling down ideas for the next phase of development, envisioning enhancements to his prototype that aligned with the innovator's suggestions about sustainability. Suddenly, a thought hit him hard, like a strong electric current. He had a unique perspective to offer, shaped by his struggles. A surge of determination filled him as he crafted notes on how he could weave his personal journey into his work. This wasn't merely a prototype anymore. It became an embodiment of his story, a tool through which he could express his identity. As he filled the pages, Jalen had a revelation. Perhaps sharing his vulnerabilities wasn't a liability at all. It might be the very essence that resonated with others. The thought sent him spiraling into a new determination. He would showcase not just a product, but a narrative of grit, change, and evolution. Was this the bridge he needed to cross into leadership? The cafe buzzed around him, but his thoughts were concentrated like a laser. He started outlining strategies for presenting his revised ideas, planning how he could build on the innovator's feedback and harmonize it with his own vision. Each paragraph he crafted was laced with a passionate urgency that leapfrogged over the doubts that once held him captive. But then came another wave of anxiety, the perception of others. Jalen wrestled with the fear of how vulnerability would be received. The risk laid bare. Would his authenticity be an invitation for connection or a door to ridicule? He leaned back in his chair, tightening his grip on the notebook. Doubts whispered again, coaxing him to retreat behind a facade of polished confidence. As he strategized, he made a promise to himself. He would refract that fear into fuel. Every moment he had feared rejection would become an opportunity to connect, to lead with the raw energy of his journey. A fire ignited in him, forcing his shoulders back. He would step into the arena bravely, transforming vulnerability into a strength. Finishing his coffee and notes, Jalen left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose. His next move was clear. He needed to reach out to the innovator and request another meeting, not just for guidance, but mentorship. Yet as he walked down the street, the impending encounter loomed in his mind like a shadow. Would he have the courage to present his newly forged ideas that intermingled his story with his work? His pulse quickened as he thought about the prospect of rejection. The cold realization hit him. He had crossed one threshold, but now he stood on the brink of another, poised to confront not only challenges, but his reflection and willingness to grow. Jalen's next leap could either build bridges to new trajectories of success or send him crashing into a deeper chasm of doubt. The horizon glimmered with promise, yet the journey ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty. With every step forward, he pondered, would this leap catalyze a transformation free from the chains of fear or expose newfound insecurities that he had yet to confront? The urgency continued to pulse through him as he prepared for the moment, one that could change everything. Jalen approached the meeting location, a buzz of excitement mingled with apprehension whirling in his stomach. His journey had shifted gears rapidly, pushing him from the shadows of mere mechanics into roles twisting with promise, an innovator, a visionary. But with each transition lay the gravity of expectation, not just from others, but from himself. He could no longer rewind to the comfort of ceaseless ambition. It was time to transform aspiration into action. As he entered the Innovation Hub, a vibrant space filled with bright minds and creative spirits, he felt a spark, an electric connection between the environment and his newfound resolve. The innovator would be waiting. What would he discover? What advice would shape his next steps? After an anticipatory moment, he spotted the innovator waving him over with a warm smile. Jalen's heart quickened. "Glad you could make it," the innovator said, extending a firm handshake. "Let's see where we can take your vision next." As they settled into their conversation, Jalen shared his proposal for the electric vehicle prototype, explaining how he wanted to weave his journey and the essence of sustainability into the design. Each word flowed with a newfound clarity, infusing his descriptions with the weight of lived experiences that shaped his perspective. "I want my vehicle to do more than run," he asserted. "I want it to inspire, to challenge what people think of mechanics and innovation. It should embody resilience, not just performance." The innovator leaned in, nodding attentively. "That's the spirit I was hoping to see. Stories connected to your designs can create a more profound impact. People don't just want products, they want connections." That feedback was the affirmation Jalen craved. With growing confidence, he fleshed out ideas on marketing concepts and community engagement that could elevate the prototype beyond a mere vehicle. Implementing workshops for future engineers to share knowledge reflected a commitment to transformation in the industry. For the first time, there was a palpable synergy between vision and action as they brainstormed together, melding Jalen's journey with innovative solutions. The innovator's insights turned every word he spoke into momentum, inspiring fresh angles that only deepened Jalen's commitment. As the meeting drew to a close, the innovator offered practical advice on navigating potential pitfalls, translating challenges into launching pads rather than barriers. Be ready for criticism, he warned. Even the best ideas are often met with skepticism. It's how you tackle that criticism that will set you apart. The truth resonated deeply within Jalen. It echoed the fears he had harbored, the judgments that loomed over his efforts. But now, armed with a battle-tested ethos, he felt liberated to embrace challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. As they wrapped up, the innovator's last words lingered in the air. You have what it takes, Jalen. Don't shy away from sharing your journey. It's the heartbeat of your innovation. Stepping outside into the sunlight, exhilaration coursed through him. That conversation was the first step towards not just an electric vehicle prototype, but a bridge toward a new identity, an identity rooted in authenticity and courage. A drive surged within him. He would not retreat from visibility. Over the coming weeks, Jalen poured himself into refining his prototype, leaning into the lessons learned from the innovator. He balanced meticulous craftsmanship with freshly gained insights, allowing every stroke of design to sing his story. The day of unveiling his prototype at the national competition loomed ahead, and with it came a rush of apprehension and exhilaration that was almost intoxicating. Rehearsals entailed not only showcasing the vehicle, but also voicing the narrative behind it. Finally, standing on that stage, he would not just present a vehicle, he would present himself, the amalgamation of struggle and tenacity. He envisioned each face in the audience transformed from skeptics to supporters, people who understood his journey. The moment arrived, and Jalen stepped into the spotlight, heart racing, but his resolve unyielding. Embracing the uncertainty, he opened his mouth and shared not just specs and mechanics, but the heartfelt story behind every aspect of his design. The twin ambitions of performance and sustainability coursing through the veins of metal and innovation. The applause that reverberated around him echoed not just approval, but recognition of a story told well. This was more than achievement, it was affirmation. That night, the judges declared Jalen's prototype a standout. He had proven that innovation had no singular face, and that every grease-stained hand bore the potential of a dreamer. Jalen looked out at the crowd, his heart soaring. No longer was he merely a mechanic. He had become a catalyst for change, merging legacy and aspiration into one authentic narrative. Reflecting on his journey, he had truly transformed. What had begun as an anchor of doubt had morphed into a sail of conviction, allowing him to navigate through uncharted waters, sculpting a path of innovation brick by brick, heart by heart. And as he left the stage, one thing was clear. This was just the beginning. The desire for change was now alive and throbbing within him, ready to take on the world. If you felt the pulse of Jalen's journey, if you crave more transformative tales, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss the exclusive emotional stories coming next. Leave a like now to help this channel reach more souls seeking connection. Your support matters immensely. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Jalen's journey. What did you learn, and how will you embrace your own evolution? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Together, let's build a community of growth.